Welcome to our T-shirt service Sunday. I'm Reverend Sue Browning, and I am the minister who has the real privilege of serving the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River and the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton. I welcome visitors, friends, members, and I can't help but acknowledge that it was this weekend last year that we had our first shared service, our first virtual service. On that Saturday night, I filmed something, Ellen filmed something, and we had folks scrambling to try to figure out how to put stuff up on our brand new YouTube channels. Many thanks. I'm seeing Don Barker and John Ramsey. And it's through this work we've done this year that we've continued to build the we of connection, the we of inclusion. We come together today. Maybe you have on a t-shirt, maybe you read the newsletter about that, maybe you put on a hat or used a favorite coffee mug, because it's a time to remember our stories, our broad connections to one another, our values, our passions. And we come together in this spirit of joy and fun, but we also come together in recognition that there have been more shootings, loss of lives in the Atlanta area, 8 individuals with the breadth and depth of their lives, with loved ones waking up today in pain. So when we come together each week, we bring all of that together. We come with the many realities of our world. We come together for reflection. We come together in love. I light our chalice this week with words from Cynthia Landrum. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other. We were looking back through our archives to find music that would give us a start on our T-shirt Sunday with some energy. So this was a service, it was Pride weekend a couple years ago, and you're going to see a group, they call themselves Crashbox Theater, singing together with the UUFE choir members. So I offer you now True Colors, our first music.
Take
So that music was made in the sanctuary. We had a different backdrop then. And as we think about t-shirts, I was showing some folks ahead of time, I brought in a t-shirt quilt that our daughter, we actually had it made, but she wanted to put all her t-shirts together. And that became a thing for folks. She's 30 now. And you can see some of the different places that were important in her life. Times that she was a lifeguard or a Girl Scout. You can see, I can see people trying to look at it. I can try to send some closer up pictures. She was born into Red Sox loyalty. Whether she's fully kept that, you never know, but I think sometimes our commitments start with those types of parts in our lives. And I know my husband and I can look at that quilt and feel a collection of things that were important to her. So I asked folks to send in some t-shirt pictures. So now we're gonna look at some of the stories that we might hear, because when I look at t-shirts, I think they do form a story. And we're gonna show the t-shirt parade one slide at a time. And I'm going to actually sort of talk us through it. We're gonna get that slide up in just a second. Yay. So for our two congregations, Liz has led a t-shirt service in Easton. I have led them in other places, and I don't think we've actually done it up in Chestertown yet. But what I would ask you to think is, we're going to walk through these one at a time. What are some of the questions you might want to ask the person who submitted the t-shirt? We'll talk about that at the end, but let's go ahead and look at our first slide. So one thing I'll observe is t-shirts multiply. T-shirts multiply in today's world. We'll talk about that a little in the sermon. So this was a collection someone sent, and one of the things I noticed here is I had a similar t-shirt. I see Women's Wave, and I have one in almost the same colors that's there. Our next slide. We have slides that come from special places that we were loyal to, and I see that this says it's a run. So that would have had a story for this member. I can tell that was submitted by MQ. Our next slide. So what's interesting to me is once they came up with the screen print technologies, it didn't only go on t-shirts. T-shirts have not really been around in the way that we think of them forever. They really got popular in the 1970s. There were a few t-shirts way back when, but they were not as big a thing. And once that technology was there, it started appearing everywhere. And I thought it was really interesting that the person who submitted this said masks have now been another place that we wear art on our bodies or carry it around in our coffee mugs. Our next slide. We put them on magnets, we put them on cars. The next. This was a women's march, and I can imagine when this t-shirt goes up, there are others here who maybe were at that event or wished they had gone, or were glad they didn't. T-shirts can bring forward that type of emotion. Our next one. There are things that happen as anniversaries, and the submission of this shirt would come with those specific stories and also take us back to other ones, some stories where t-shirts may not have been as obvious or as common. Let's go to the next one. Okay, and we can flip through a couple of these, but I loved these because they were, related t-shirts. I'll go ahead and share that these are from Don Barker, which probably wouldn't surprise some folks. But what's the sermon that he could write? Science, like magic, but real. I think I'll sign him up for the summer. Next one. Okay, this actually gets and I think if you flip to the next slide, you'll see it a little bigger. So the slide says free contradictions, $2. Slides can make us think. This one, it took me a few minutes to try to figure out what was going on. The next one. Self-explanatory. Next. Okay, we have a series. If we were going to have a contest today, we're going to flip through the next, I think, 3 or 4 slides. We'll just keep going through pictures of John, but you can see the excitement in sharing with us what is in his t-shirt collection. And he says there are plenty more. And this was the final one I think we have there. If we back up one, I don't know if we could pick that one back up. If we can't, it's okay. The one that said Sermonator was actually a gift given to me by one of our members for my birthday one year. And I think when you get a gift and somebody actually takes, and you can also see how often I iron t-shirts, but when you get a gift from somebody and they've actually gone to the store and had it printed, you feel really seen. You feel, you know that people are observing the work of putting together services. So I share these t-shirts, and if folks want to, either in the chat, maybe we can go sort of like we're doing Joys and Sorrows now. If there's anybody that wants to just read out what's on their t-shirt or hat, we could just take a minute to do that. Is there a way we can go to observe everybody? Does that work? I see one saying Virginia Tech. Any other t-shirts coming through? I think people are going to have to unmute.
I have one that I've really enjoyed for the past year or two, and it's one that Michelle got me. It's Believe There Is Good, but the way it's highlighted, it also reads Be the Good. And it's just been a really helpful reminder, seeing what's going on in our country and society the past few years.
Anybody else want to read out what's on their t-shirt?
I'd like to read mine if you can. It indicates how the brain can interpret different things. If you look at this closely, it says intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. It's written by Stephen Hawkins. It's amazing. If you look at it first, you can't understand what it's saying, but if you look at it closely, suddenly the brain figures it out.
Yeah, and I bet you there's folks who would like to ask Jim questions like, how did you pick that one? That's very cool. And when you get to know Jim, it wouldn't surprise you. He's a computer scientist.
There's a website called Science Website. I have all different kinds of t-shirts. This is just one of them. I think the ones that Don Barker had may have been from there also.
Yeah. Any other ones that we want to get, Carl?
Yeah, I have a t-shirt from, says Unitarian Universalist of the Chester River. I have 2 big U's on the back. We always used to say it looked like a horse had kicked me in the back, you know, if you wore the shirt. But there are spots of paint all over the shirt, Navajo white. It's the shirt that I used when we painted our sanctuary when we were putting it in.
Yeah, and shirts have stories. And what I'm hoping is over time we share these stories to get to know one another better. Do we have another 1 or 2, or anybody have anything in the chat they want to put in?
I have a favorite t-shirt that I'm not wearing, but it kind of shows my love of music. And it says, a piano is a piano is a piano. And it's a quote by Gertrude Steinway.
So
I have one.
Suzanne.
I don't know if you can see, but it says something about love bugs. These are all my grandkids that I call my love bugs, and they're all labeled. I wore this when I got my second COVID shot, and a joy is we're going to go see these love bugs next weekend.
Yay. 1 or 2 more, and then we'll share after during coffee hour.
Betty had one.
Who? I have one. This is
one.
Annie, and then Amy, and then we'll see how we're doing here. Go ahead.
Annie, you gonna go? Or I'll go. I have to stand up. This is just pure joy. This is going to the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta, which was a lifelong dream. And it brought me, it was just so much joy and happiness. So no big political statement, just pure joy, finally getting out there.
Annie?
Yeah, can you see it? I'll stand up. This is Party on the Bay from Rock Hall. It dates back to 1996 when we first came, when I first knew that Rock Hall was a place on the map. And it's like 25 years old, so I love it. And it has wonderful memories and got me acquainted with the Chesapeake Bay and Rock Hall.
Well, I'll follow up on that one. I have Rock Hall. I love this place. And the nice people live here.
So what I'm hoping we take away, and I am going to, keep a general eye on time and encourage folks as the service goes on, put something in the chat, share what you're thinking about. I know I've got quite a few t-shirts, but what I want to think about today is the stories. We heard bits and pieces. I'm not sure I'm spotlighted, but you guys can figure that out.
So Sue, you're really hard to see right now.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to move like I did last week.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I actually have the height figured out this week. Use of hymnals. There we go. Last week it was too low. Okay, does that work? And you can get a better look at the quilt. So what I'm hoping as we talk through t-shirts today is that we think about the importance of stories. The same t-shirt could mean something very different to two people. But what are the questions, if you were in your most patient mode, you would want to ask somebody about their t-shirt? When did they get it? Why did they buy it? Who are the kids that are listed on the t-shirt? All those different questions help us get to know one another. And when I think of the broader society, I think that matters, to remember that everyone has a story. And these stories matter. And one of the ways in the 21st century we tell the story is through our t-shirts and our coffee mugs. So that is our sort of thoughts for all ages, general reflection piece. And I do want to say that having a t-shirt parade for real is very fun. So we will work on that as we start gathering again in person. One of the other ways we get to know ourselves, we get to know our partners in the community is by doing outreach collections. And the outreach collections we've talked about and we do as partners, we're also learning to do them in a new way with new technology. So today's Easton's, Chestertown did For All Seasons recently. If you want to give, check with Amy or Lynn in Chestertown. Of course, you can give multiple times. But I really want to offer gratitude to Tom Arnold. You're about to see a video for this week's outreach collection, including instructions on how you give and what we see in our communities. So in the stories, we now hear about care packs. So we're going to share that video now.
Hi, this is Tom Arnold with the UUFE Social Justice Committee Pod, bringing you an update on care packs of Talbot County, originally founded by Megan Cook and Emily Moody and staffed by Maggie Gow, pictured here. Care Packs was originally founded to address food insecurity in Talbot County, which according to Talbot Family Network was declining amongst students at Talbot County through 2019, but then has increased back up to about 1,500 students here in Talbot County living with food insecurity. Last spring, at the height of the COVID lockdown, care packs continued to distribute food weekly at local public school parking lots. Care Packs uses a large open space inside the old Black & Decker factory to safely package food acquired from many sources, including the Maryland Food Bank, local stores, and individual donations. Last fall, Care Packs shifted to once a month distributions in the Black & Decker parking lot, while Talbot County Public Schools increased their distribution through their contractor. Some food, fresh produce like this, was donated by local stores right before the poll dates. They also donated meats that were frozen right away, and all this food was brought to the parking lot by the Maryland Food Bank and packaged by volunteers to be distributed to families lined up to pick up the food. These cars carried 125 families, representing 250 students in Talbot County Public Schools. You can donate to Care Packs through the UUFE website, following this link on the cover on the main page down to the donation page, and follow the instructions there, or sign up to volunteer through their Sign Up Genie, which I can send to you if you'd like, or you can ask them to send directly to you. My email address and CarePac's email address are both here. Hope to see you out there.
Thank you, Tom. And I just want to remind folks, these outreach collections are great, and it does, you can send a check into the church, just mark it for outreach, or you can go through the steps that Tom showed, and Chestertown has a very similar donate process. They really work well, and just by a few clicks today, you can make a difference in the community. I take us now to our time for reflection, our time for meditation. I think we sometimes wonder, what is it we can do? What is it we can do in a chaotic world with so many symbols, with places that are both joy and times of struggles? And I think the outreach collection is an example. Our reading this morning is from Rebecca Parker. It's one we've used before. I think it's one that needs that periodic airing. So an adapted version of Choose to Bless the World by Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or to curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can be used to serve and feed the hungry, to bind up wounds, to welcome the stranger, to praise what is sacred, to do the work of justice, to offer love. Any of these can be used to draw down the prison door, to hoard bread, to abandon the poor, to obscure what is holy, to comply with injustice or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. Those who bless the world live their life in a gesture of thanks. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility that is waiting. I ask us to reflect on those words for a minute as we prepare to share our joys and sorrows with one another. for the choices we make, for the commitments we make. We are grateful. Now is the time in our service where we share our personal joys and sorrows. It's one of the ways that we build a community. And it is, okay, I'm seeing something in the chat that I didn't understand. It's one of the ways we build community. And so we just ask if you want to briefly have me light a candle here. I'm going to do it virtually because the candles are off in a place in the room that's sunny. So imagine that we are all lighting these candles at this time. And I do light the first candle for the many losses due to the COVID virus, the many essential workers and scientists who have helped us through it all, and for the hope in the vaccines, the hope in the challenge that we will rise and we will keep getting past this time in our community. We light that first virtual candle. I light the next candle in memory of those killed in Atlanta. And I light that candle recognizing that many others died in gun violence this past week. We hold all those who were targeted, who are facing losses due to violence, both those fresh and those losses that are brought forward each time there is a trauma. We hold those communities of loss that have losses in love. For the many joys and sorrows that have been shared, for those in our hearts, we hold the whole community in love. We have some music now as we reflect on the past week and the past year. So we've been talking, I hope folks had a chance in that music to catch our breaths a little. It's been a different year. It's been a different week. One of the things we've been talking about all month in the congregations is commitment. We've talked about the challenges of commitment. We talked to MQ and Ann earlier this month. Easton is going through its stewardship campaign. Chestertown just finished. And we've asked members to give testimonials. So as we think about the opportunities to give and to support our congregations, and particularly for Easton, who is still sending in pledges, we offer this reflection from Mary Lou and Tom Malone, relatively new members.
Hello, we're the Malones, Mary Lou and Tom. We've participated in UUFE since January of 2020. And COVID struck its ugly head shortly thereafter, so we were only able to attend a handful of services, but we've enjoyed them very much. Tom was raised in the Episcopal Church and I in the Congregational Church. But in our adult lives, we really haven't been invested in formal religion or Christianity. Although we have wonderful friends and family, in the past few years, we've realized that something was missing. We've heard about UU from friends over the years, not UUFE specifically, but others here and abroad. And we did a little research and came across the 7 principles of UU. Those principles really spoke to both of us. We felt that we had found a new pathway for our spiritual growth. So we took the plunge, and a year ago, January, we showed up at your doorstep. I recall Carol and Martha being welcomers that day. We were welcomed with warmth and smiles and open arms, and maybe even a hug, which might become a thing of the past. We feel very much a part of the UUFE family. We love its sense of community, its focus on equality, justice, inclusion. We love its diversity, and we're both looking forward to working with all of you to carry the banner to enhance and improve our spiritual lives. For those of us who are not members of UU or are considering UU, we welcome you to take the plunge as we did a year ago and see for yourselves. Our very best to each one of you as you continue to navigate the COVID waters and as you consider your support for UU over the next year. Stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.
I think it's such an important message to recognize that new folks are showing up, and we're always figuring out what we can do together that we could not do alone. I love that Mary Lou mentioned something felt like it was missing, and we're helping collectively to fill that void. So there are so many expressions of what we care about when I looked at all those t-shirts, so many stories. I think t-shirts are the artwork of our times. I do think it's really fascinating that if you go back much before the 1960s, you really wouldn't see t-shirts, at least not that we think of them. Things that have become a staple in our wardrobe were barely worn until the 1970s, and then it just exploded. Somehow folks figured out it was a way to put messages out there. And as someone who Bill and I raised our kids in the 1990s, at least in our middle class existence in a DC suburb, t-shirts filled drawers and closets. You could buy one for just about any event our kids attended. They were given to them at parties and camps. And for our children, each shirt had a story. One, I can remember, we would let the kids pick one souvenir on a trip, and sometimes they would pick that shirt and they would remember that, or the 5th grade class graduation. Maybe they don't remember them all, but as I've talked to my children, they remember a lot of these shirts. I think I wanted to offer, and Bill and I, say me, it's both of us here, wanted to offer our children a sense of connection. And we thought maybe a hat or a shirt would do it. They would feel belonging. At least I think that was our theory. It's probably not too bad of one. And their t-shirts, as you can see from my daughter's quilt, they changed over time. So I was thinking, what if our Unitarian Universalists, and it would have been the Unitarians and the Universalists, what if they had had t-shirts in their time? Just the fact that it's hard to picture, when you picture what people would have worn in the 1800s, you can't see them saying, oh, I don't know, it's a t-shirt kind of day, I'll just throw my sweatpants on and go to the store. It just wasn't going to happen that way. So I was thinking about one of our ancestors from the early 1800s, William Ellery Channing. He was right at that point. He gave his first big sermon on Unitarian Christianity in the Baltimore church in the early 1800s. And I was thinking what he might have on his church, it would probably be very conservative, maybe a navy blue shirt. There's got to be reason. I can see him saying that. He was trying to figure out how you introduced some rationalist thoughts in some of the Christian traditions without taking away the core moral messages from Jesus. He wasn't trying to separate, but he was trying to differentiate a bit. I was thinking about Hosea Ballou, who was an early Universalist. And the Universalists were the ones who said, God loves everybody. I was wondering about his shirt. Maybe it would say something like, yes, everybody. Maybe that's what his shirt would say. And I think he would probably go, just speculating here, some soothing, maybe heavenly type images. If I bring us forward into the 20th century, the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed was an African-American minister, is an African-American minister in our tradition. And he wrote the book, Black Pioneers in a White Denomination. He talked about the struggles, the messages of inclusion that were not lived out, are still not lived out all the time today. I think his t-shirt, I couldn't pick a color necessarily, it might say something like, look around the room. Look around the room. If we're talking about diversity, what does it mean to live into that value? And when I was pulling forward to a much more current UU theologian, I went to Professor Reverend Sophia Bentecourt. She's somebody who always is talking in her theology. She does a lot of writing about the toxic nature of individualism and the need to think and work collectively. She lifts up over and over our interdependence. I was thinking her shirt might be something like, we are saved together. Around the early 2000s, when marriage equality, particularly up in Massachusetts, was being debated in the public square, the Unitarian Universalists came up with a slogan. It was, I don't know if it was really a slogan, it was actually a whole movement in a group that said, standing on the side of love. We even came up with a UU color. If you can picture the color of a school bus, that was the color that was selected. It was sort of a goldish yellow. And then over the last 5 years or so, to become more universal, to recognize accessibility in different places, it was changed to side with love. And it is an invitation. You can buy shirts, you can buy stickers, you can get signs, but it is a place to look at our core Unitarian Universalist message. And it's a shirt you can wear with pride, you can order it. So shirts can be like that. We can sometimes brand ourselves. And at their best, I think t-shirts are conversation starters. I know at a large event, you can find other Unitarian Universalists. The shirts, some of them are getting a little ratty by now, but there's that sense of feeling connection and strong. I think we sometimes want to find our home of belonging in a world that's chaotic and churning. And our public commitments can open these doors. They can actually show us our loyalties. And I think loyalty is an interesting type of commitment. Loyalty, and I'm not sure it's always a good one. I think it's a bit of a scary one sometimes when we think about commitment, but it's a special trust. It's a place where you don't need to wonder too far about what is solid. It comes with comfort. It comes with promise. And I think loyalty can lead toward that sense of tribalism. Commitment's good, belonging's good, authenticity feels good. And yet we can get to sticky areas. If you think about the British loyalists in tension with the American colonists, we use that word to say, whose side are you on? So there's a place where loyalty is a real rock, and there's a place where it can get a little messy. I think when we talk sometimes about our white supremacy culture, and again here, I'm not talking about the extreme, places of Nazism and neo-Nazism, those places, but the overall white supremacy culture where we have a hierarchy that gets held in place. I think sometimes there's a place of loyalty, of not wanting some change, of holding on to a status quo. It's a place where I think we need to be examining our commitments. Because if t-shirts are opening up the stories, the understanding that we're all different, places of grouping one another can lead to stereotypes and other challenges. I think cultural identity can be like that. The good parts of knowing one another and making some assumptions about patterns and traditions. We can assume we know somebody based on what their t-shirt says. And I can almost guarantee we don't. What is it that we want to take forward from the t-shirt era? What do we want to learn about? The cultural identity question was sort of front and center to me when I was looking at what happened in Atlanta this week. It was interesting that the president of Wesley Theological Seminary, where I went, he noted this in his statement that he made the day after the murders. I know the news of the murder of 8 women last night in Atlanta, many of whom were immediately identified as Asian American, rightly struck a chord of fear within the Asian American community across the country and on our campus. It doesn't matter what the gunman's motives turn out to be. It's the shock without surprise of stories like this that triggers fear and vulnerability in our brothers and sisters. I was on that campus for about 5 years. I was a commuter student, but it was one of my places where I had some exposure to the Korean American and the Korean immigrant community. There were folks from all sorts of backgrounds that were at seminary, but this group was somewhat notable. They lived predominantly in the married student housing. Some were single folks. And what I got to do in that space over 5 years was just get to know some folks, get to know them not as somebody who did or didn't speak Korean, there was a mix there, but to get to know some families, to understand some of the ranges of personalities, and to have some exposure. So I know when the president spoke of that community and the campus, he was speaking of a fear that he knew and understood. And he said, I'm speaking as a white male, but he was sharing that we shake our communities when stereotypes are prevailing and when guns are the responses folks have. It's not a sermon on gun policy or anything else, but a story on what happens when folks see one another as groups and when fears are stoked. So this has been a challenging year. It's been an isolating year. So my hope is as we put our coats away and we start wearing all that art, we start wearing our t-shirts that we take the time to ask about stories. As we picture everyone along the street, as we're walking down, and we may see certain ethnic or racial features or something else, to realize we don't know that person. And if we make assumptions, we are losing our place to find the common ground, to see where their t-shirts may overlap with ours. So my hope is that we trust in the power of stories as one of the tools we have to not get stuck in the worlds of stereotypes. Whether it's t-shirts, coffee mugs, or different ways we learn about one another, may we truly accept everyone in their true colors. May we see diversity in love. And as I looked for a t-shirt, the one I picked has no labels. Some of the families here may recognize this was from our peace camp about a couple years ago. And I said to one of the kids were making tie-dye shirts. I said, I've never made a tie-dye shirt. So they made me one. And so the next day that was there. And I just look at how few labels are here. I look at the colors that are brought together. And that, after a year of isolation, I think is a place we find hope. It's in our stories and in our connections to one another. May it be so, and blessed be. And we now have our closing hymn, and then we'll have just a couple of announcements.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge to ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
That was Bozena and Dave, and we are so grateful for that music that just really seemed to fit for today. Do we have announcements? Christina, I believe you had a few.
I do. So I think everyone at UUFE is aware that we're in the middle of our stewardship campaign.
If we
Which is
can we spotlight Christina, or is she spotlighted?
So the stewardship campaign is an important time when we ask you to renew your financial support for our fellowship. Everyone has hopefully received their packet in the mail. If not, please reach out to a team member, and that would be Dick Dowdy, Jane Terraby, or Mary Dunleavy. Please note that the materials you've received and also last week's presentation highlights some important information for us to understand about a need to increase our pledges so that we can continue our great programs at UUFE and also meet the needs for caring for our building and property. This year, we're relying on the U.S. Postal Service to collect our pledges instead of being able to collect them in person during services. So if you're able to please return it in the mail this week, that would be wonderful as we hope to conclude the campaign by March 31st. Some of you are asking about how to become involved with your time and energy at UUFE, and there's some information in our recent newsletter about some opportunities for that. Also, our native plant sale is kicking off. Look for an email this week with a catalog of plants that can be ordered. And thank you to Kara Christie and Sally Woodall for helping make that happen. The orders will be collected from March 25th to April 16th. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that there will be a small group gathering at the park in Trapp this afternoon at noon that Carol Meredith is helping coordinate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements from Chestertown? Before we even get into announcements from Chestertown, gratitude to everybody who made the sock burning last night happen. What a wonderful event. It was a great parking lot event, and it was a chance to deal with the equinox, which I did not mention in the service, but today is that point of turning, that point of hoping for coats to come off and for that experience. And I'm not sure if Chestertown had any specific announcements today.
I think I had one. I know that David mentioned last week about our pledge drive, and we actually extended it for another week. And I'm glad to say that it's now complete, and we met our goal. In fact, we exceeded our goal. We're now at 105% of our goal. So many thanks to the congregation, and good luck to UFFC. Hope you do as well. I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, and Carl, and I'm going to forget names, but everyone who managed the pledge drive in Chestertown. It's encouraging to see that in a challenging year, those commitments came in. Okay, I think that might be it for announcements today. Please keep your eye on the newsletter. We're doing our best to keep messages out there. So you're not going to actually physically see me do it, but know that I'm going to walk over and do it in just a moment. We extinguish our flame, committed to telling stories, committed to listening stories, and to understand, yes, we mean everyone. May everyone be included, feel love, and belonging. Until we meet again next week. And next week, just to confirm, next week, Annie, is a recorded service? I believe so. I think we're filming next week's service instead of Zoom. So blessings all, and we leave with Philip and go lift it up. Have a great week.